Journey to the Cross, Day 19. You and I have three problems that only the Redeemer has the power and willingness to solve. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love. According to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. Wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. Against you and you alone have I sinned, and done what is evil in your sight, so that you may be justified in your words and blameless in your judgment. Behold, I was brought forth in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me. Behold, you delight in truth in the inward being, and you teach me wisdom in the secret heart. Purge me with hyssop, and I shall be clean. Wash me, and I shall be whiter than snow. Let me hear joy and gladness. Let the bones that you have broken rejoice. Hide your face from my sins, and blot out all my iniquities. Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, and take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and uphold me with a willing spirit. Then I will teach transgressors your ways, and sinners will return to you. Deliver me from blood guiltiness, O God of my salvation, and my tongue will sing aloud your righteousness. O Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. For you will not delight in sacrifice, or I would give it. You will not be pleased with a burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise. Psalm 51, verses 1 to 17. Psalm 51 records one of the most important prayers in the entire Bible. It is a prayer that everyone should emulate because it is a model for the heart of true confession. King David, a chosen servant of the Lord, had used his position, power, and resources not only to take another man's wife, but to murder that man as well. It unpacks for us the kind of confession that comes from a truly sorrowful heart. You see the character of this confession from the very first verse. David immediately acknowledges that his problem is not simply this occasion of sin, but something larger and more deeply serious than that. How do we know this? We know this because of three words David uses to describe what he's dealing with: transgression, iniquity, and sin. These words are not synonyms, but careful descriptions of the different aspects of the nature of sin. Sin is a trifold problem, not just an occasion of wrongdoing. Let's examine these together. Number 1, transgression. Sin is much more than a moment of weakness that leads to doing what is wrong in the eyes of God. Surely we all have these moments, but transgression concerns something deep inside us that makes us susceptible to temptation's draw and that weakens us in our battle with sin. A transgression is a willful stepping over of God's boundaries. Transgression is seeing the no trespassing sign and climbing the fence anyways because there is something you want to get to on the other side. Transgressing is intentionally parking in the no parking zone because you would rather save a few steps than obey the law. Transgression is yelling at your wife when you know it is wrong because there is something that you want from her, and you will do whatever is necessary to get it. Transgression is pilfering pens from work when you know very well they weren't supplied for your personal use. Transgression is a spirit of rebellion. It is putting yourself in God's place and writing your own rules. It's wanting your own way more than submitting to God's way. Transgression is a condition of the heart that turns every sinner into a rebel in some way. True confession confesses to more than weakness. It confesses to the rebellion of heart that causes you to be weak in your struggle with sin. Number 2, iniquity. Something even deeper than a spirit of rebellion lives in me. It is the thing that causes me to be rebellious. Consider the words of Titus 1:15. To the pure all things are pure, but to the defiled and unbelieving nothing is pure. But both their minds and their consciences are defiled. The only way we would ever perfectly obey God is if the thoughts, motives, desires, and intentions of our hearts were completely pure. But sin defiles the heart. Iniquity is moral uncleanness. It is like water that is no longer pure, but has corrupting elements in it. Iniquity is like breathing polluted air. You can't see it, you don't realize it, but it contains impurities that will harm you. I wish I could say that my heart is pure. I wish I could say that there are no artifacts of mortal corruption in me. And because there aren't, I am impervious to temptation. But sadly, I cannot say that, and neither can you as long as sin still resides in your heart. So confession doesn't just admit to a moment of wrongdoing and a spirit of rebellion, but it also acknowledges the moral impurity of heart that is the seedbed of that rebellion. Number 3, sin. Finally, our confession of sin is a confession of a specific instance of weakness and failure. The word sin connotes falling short of God's wise and righteous standard. It's more than pulling the bowstring back and missing the target. It's pulling the bowstring back again and again, and every time falling short of the target. Confession of a specific sin against God and others is an admission of weakness. It is an admission that when left on our own, even in our best moments, we will still fall short of God's holy requirement of us. Embedded in the word sin is a cry for help. It is a cry to be rescued from your bondage to yourself. It is a plea to not be left to your own weakness, but to be forgiven and rescued by one greater and more powerful than you will ever be. Confession of sin carries with it a commitment to be ever more dependent on the Redeemer for the help that He alone can give. Confession of sin is an admission that this instance of weakness and failure stands as a testament of your ongoing need for God's grace. So in this season of personal reflection and confession, may your confession be as deep and broad as David's. And may these 3 biblical words, transgression, iniquity, and sin, guide that confession. And as you confess, may you be comforted by God's promise that He will never turn His back on you. He will never despise one who comes to Him with a truly broken and contrite heart. Confession is God's welcome to enter into a deeper experience of the majesty of His grace.